live. Welcome, everybody. I am Donna Bowman with Stratus Admissions, and I'm here with my colleague, Sophie Hilaire, and we are going to talk about Wharton today. And actually, it's a great day to talk about that. Obviously, those of you who are in the thick of round one know that you need to submit your application today. And we are going to kind of talk about Wharton. We're going to talk about some of the admissions things, some of the things about what makes Wharton a great school and what makes someone a great candidate for Wharton. Talk a little bit about things that were kind of insights. We are really lucky to have Sophie, who's an alum of Wharton, to kind of share with us some things that were part of her experience at Wharton. So we, to also just step back for a moment, Stratus Admissions is an admissions consulting firm that we have been in business since 2006, and we have every year helped thousands of people through the MBA admissions process with, I would say, a focus on some of the top business schools, but really across top 20, top 30 MBA programs and programs around the world. We are very collaborative, and just this is actually an example of that. A lot of the things we do together. When you work with us at Stratus, you are actually working with your counselor, but also at the right time, we introduce you to our school-specific experts. So a little bit about Stratus. Wanted to kind of jump in and get started. I'm a Kellogg MBA, also have spent a lot of time in the admissions space and actually a lot of time helping young professionals right at this transition to the MBA. But Sophie is a Wharton grad and also has a fascinating background. And so I'm going to let Sophie introduce herself briefly, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Thanks so much, Donna. Hi, I'm Sophie. I'll just briefly introduce myself. I did go to Wharton, so I'm really excited to talk about it with you today. I certainly don't represent Wharton or work on their behalf, but I am a counselor here at Stratus, taking a little time off from client counseling at the moment, very busy with a home remodel. But the way I landed there is I went to West Point for undergrad, served in the U.S. Army. From there, went to Wharton, and after that, worked at McKinsey. And then ever since then, have kind of done a more random walk in life, to include this work, which I had done for free for veterans for many years, just helping folks out with their applications, and nowadays do it in a little bit more formal way. But really excited to share some insights just about the application process. I know Wharton's a little bit of an unusual school to apply to, especially for any round one folks who are starting to think ahead about the TBD, and how that's like a really unique type of interview. So I'm happy to share what I know and answer your questions. So please feel free to leave them in there while we're chatting, since we'll be getting to your questions for the second half of this conversation.
Yeah, that good point. So I'll be monitoring the comments and we'll kind of try to bring them in along the way, but we've got some things we want to discuss. First of all, start about Wharton. This was obviously a big year for Wharton for a lot of reasons, in that some big changes happened. There is a shortened, sort of career goals essay question, and Wharton is now on the Common App. So that's interesting. I just pulled some stats to kind of, which I think all of you here are well aware, but obviously Wharton is a very competitive school in their class of 2026 profile. Looks like they had over 7,300 applications for a class of 866. Average work is 5 years. Average GMAT score, and I'm going to say, take that with a grain of salt. And I don't know when they put their average GMAT, if that's just, I assume it's just the old GMAT because it's 732, but because I don't know how they would put in the focus and the same thing. But that's actually a point maybe for everybody who's applying. Don't freak out about these GMAT averages, because first of all, not everybody takes the GMAT, and second, it's unclear what's in there, and the new focus scores are going to be lower. So when you see your lower scores, don't freak out. But nevertheless, they have high, by whatever measure you want to have, average scores in there. GRE scores 163 and 162, average, and GPA 3.7. So all of that to say, super competitive school to get into. Let's talk about the sort of new essay. Sophie, what are your thoughts on kind of what you like about the new essay, and kind of anything that you would want to share with people here that might be useful?
Yeah, I mean, I've read probably hundreds of these essays by now over the years, and it just changed this year after being the same for a long time. To me, this change just feels more direct, more punchy. Let's just get to the point. They're not looking, a lot of people have actually kind of expressed, just some concern about not being able to share as much about themselves in the essay, because now it does, you just directly have to answer the questions in fewer words. What's your short-term plan? What are you going to do after that? And show us that you've done your research on Wharton. Wharton doesn't want to feel like they're your backup school and you'd rather go to Harvard or Stanford. So the way that you can communicate that through your essays is showing really specific things about Wharton that you know about, that you're excited to get involved in. I mean, there are things at Wharton that you can't do at any other business school. Yes, the consulting club is there. You're going to have that anywhere. And that does make sense for a lot of folks. I was definitely in the consulting club. But things like Follies, that if you don't know about it yet, you should look it up. It's like a big performance that the class puts on. There's something similar at CBS, but other than that, I don't know any other MBA programs.
Kellogg has Special K.
Okay.
But,
they all kind of have their own branded version of that, or pub, or different things. But there's classes you can only take at Wharton, certainly professors you're only going to be able to learn from there. And yeah, I also just would say for the essays, what a lot of the essays that I read, people, they just really want to impress the adcom. And so they go hard on the professional stuff. But if you took a step back and read hundreds of essays, those end up kind of coming off as the most dry, and like the least memorable sometimes. So it's nice to show a little bit of personality too, because another side of Wharton is that it's a big, perhaps the most social time of your life, especially after coming out of like whatever intense professional job you just had that you're excited to probably take a little 2-year break from. And how are you going to contribute to that? Like, how are you going to make the class feel more like organic networking, so that you guys really do support each other for the rest of your lives through your personal and professional pursuits? I mean, the way to do that is to actually connect over common ground and shared interests that are not necessarily like problem sets on a Saturday night. So I would definitely share whatever is that last line in your resume, find a way to put that into the longer essay now that has not changed about, what you're excited about to contribute at Wharton. Right. And yeah, that's what I would say kind of about the main essays. But I know also, Donna, we talked yesterday about the additional one.
Yeah. And before we jump to that, let me just say something about, to build on your point. In that essay 2 now, that's really the place where you can show Wharton that you have done some research about what you might do. And I think sometimes the mistake I see with my clients when I'm looking at these is that initially sometimes people go a little too deep on sharing all of the things that they have done in the past that would be where they have contributed. Let's say, for example, they were maybe doing a lot of mentoring with people and they go into detail, and that's helpful. But then you leave one sentence to say, I'm going to do, this group at Wharton that's going to also connect me to mentoring, but you don't say how or how you're going to do it differently. It's a missed opportunity to show excitement and to show that you've done some of your research. So I have a different colleague who used to always talk about credibility equals specificity. And I think that's so important. Like, I believe that you can do these things at Wharton because you're telling me the name of this club, or an event that they've done. And the way that you can actually get that information is by having conversations with Wharton students. So I still think it's really important to reach out to people in clubs to kind of find out what went well. Maybe if you can't make a visit, to actually just have conversations there. So I think that's very helpful. And I think it's hard to get out of your head, in that question 1 that was sort of iconic for Wharton. I would say that was the definition of the classic goals essay. And now people have to just really it's okay. They stripped it from 500 to 150. In doing that, they don't, I don't know how you can have a great answer and think you're going to cover the same ground. So you can let go of the fact that you don't have to share how Wharton's going to help you with this or that. They want to know what you want to do, and they want to get a sense of like how you got to this point where you are now thinking that an MBA at Wharton makes sense, right? So that's I think that's really important to keep in mind. And I'm just scanning to see. I'll try to answer the questions as they come in the relevance of things. There's a quick question about low GPA affect a good essay. Well, I mean, they're different things, right? So a great essay can be a great essay. If you have a low GPA, Wharton is going to be concerned, hey, can you do the work in the program? And so maybe you have high test scores to offset that. You want to have each part of your application be as strong as possible. So, if you have the best GMAT and the best, grades, and you don't have good essays, that's going to be a problem. So you just have to try it. And a school like Wharton, most of the people who are getting in are ticking all the boxes, are doing a great job on everything. So I would say that. And it says, I know someone who has a low GPA. And again, so if he's an exceptional guy in this case, then he probably was exceptional in some other things, right? So if that I don't think that Wharton wants to ever, or any business school wants to discourage. I've had many, many successful clients who don't have great GPAs. You shouldn't let one piece of your life, we're all more than one thing. So don't count yourself out by assuming that a low GPA or a low test score is going to keep you out. But work to be the best you can in every area. And then let's see does experience count from the date of the application or starting school education? Your work experience counts generally from the time you graduated from college. That's when the meter starts running. That doesn't mean that, if you've done something really interesting, like started a business during college, that should definitely be part of it. But so that's that.
I think I could be wrong, but I think this person was trying to ask, like, when they submit their application, but they're still going to work for another 6 months or something.
Oh, got it. Yes.
And I would say, it's whenever you start school, how much experience are you showing up there with that you can share in the classroom, and help, just broaden your classmates' perspectives.
Yeah, perfect. That's a good, So, all right. So then with that, and there has been a comment, and Sophie mentioned it, and I think I've felt that my clients have felt this as well, that with that very, narrow 150, what do you want to do? And then that question that is a little bit shorter now of how you're going to engage at Wharton, people feel like, well, where can I share who I am? And the optional essay is not really, we were having a conversation about this yesterday in preparation. It's a nuanced dance here. And maybe Sophie, I'll let you sort of give your take on it, and then we'll talk back and forth.
Yeah. So you should definitely read what each of these additional essays say for each school, because some of them are like, don't write anything unless you're trying to explain something negative or that could be confused as something
confusing.
Negative. Yeah. But sometimes they're like, hey, just share whatever you want. I feel like this one, if you're not going to, what I see a lot is someone really liked what they put in their HBS essay. Like, they came up with this awesome story. Man, they spent like months curating every word, and they're like, I want to put this in here, but I wasn't able to copy and paste it in my Wharton essays. That's pretty obvious, especially like when certain words are in there. You're not fooling anyone. The thing is, Wharton can make a decision on you with the exact information that they asked of you. But if there is something that actually ties to your application and somehow, or helps to explain something that otherwise it would be like, well, why is this person interested in doing this in the long term? Like, you just didn't have enough words to describe it, like what you're passionate about, what your why is. I think saying it succinctly in this essay is totally okay. But yeah, absolutely use it if you are not using your CURT recommender, if your undergrad GPA was really bad and you have a good reason for it, and things like that. There's another question also that asks, just like a bit about your background. And that can also be, not everyone has to answer that one, but if there is something there that's noteworthy, absolutely share it in that essay.
And, another place that So this is something that I've heard the Wharton admissions team say, something along the lines of, if there's something in your story that just makes like, if you knew, if someone knew this background about you, it would make everything click. And I'm just making up an example here, but like, let's say someone was super, maybe grew up in a place where the environment, natural disasters were affected them personally, right? And that was part of, like, seared into them why they're so interested in investing in, companies that are going to address climate change. Then maybe share a little bit of that without making it a whole essay. Like, you don't need to, so you would not be able to grab, Tux, what makes you, tell me about who you are, and try to put 300 words into an optional essay. You might be able to share a sentence or two that gives some context. The other thing that maybe is overlooked, and we didn't talk about this, but I just thought about it right now, is that also within Wharton, they're asking you for your activities and you're asking you for your awards. And when you do a good job of sharing the context of what you're doing in those awards, and maybe what was the basis for your selection, or why that you were selected, you have a chance to perhaps share a little bit more, like give them a rounded out sense. And I know that on the resume, I have heard Wharton admissions team talk about how they like to read the resume from the bottom up. So actually they start with those activities, and it's always a missed opportunity if someone just, puts maybe only their skill, like what software they know how to use or what languages they speak, and they don't say anything about what they do in their spare time. Or if they do, they say it very generically, like running, hiking, because you could be so much more specific. And if someone, was to share something about, like, I love the national parks, as an interviewer, if someone did, I would click in and want to know, oh, which one or what hikes have you done? You want to have something on that resume that would invite that next question. And if you just write running, like, well, there's like, is it trail running? Because a trail runner would be, or one of those ultra marathon runners, which I don't, which is not me. But that would be a really interesting conversation starter versus someone who just, whatever. But so there are, you have to look, maybe be creative for those places. But as someone who's read myself at this point, thousands, like, and when I was on the, side reading them, it's like, oh, if you have this stack of files, and it's like, and back in the day, it was a stack of files, although it turned into electronics. But I remember I used to have to take all these files and read them at home, and like, and if it was all business, and it was like, it just sort of it like blended into like the background. But if someone could be creative and show me how what they did in a sport gave them a mindset that helped them be successful at work, or what they did in this seemingly unrelated area, and they could draw connections between, engineering and marketing that nobody else, that I never thought of before, I would remember that. And I think that is that's where the magic happens, right? Where you can, like, and then you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about, wow, the opera singer who's, in finance, how does that go together? And what is it that she learned as an opera singer, or he, that makes them better at finance? And so that's kind of, that's something maybe for people to think about. Now, obviously, for those of you that are round one people, you've thought of that. So that's, ship has sailed, and we'll talk about TBD coming up soon. But, for those of you that are still looking to apply to Wharton in the round two, then you have some time to build this out and think about it. And that's actually maybe a good segue. What's your thought on the round one versus round two?
Yeah. I always just say, like, when you're ready, round one and round two, they admit around the same number of folks, but obviously by round two, let's just say someone with a very similar profile to yours has already been admitted in round one, and they're not necessarily trying to have a bunch of clones. So there are fewer seats, but I feel like the odds are kind of similar. So if right now, like in round one, you're just getting crushed at work. You do not have time. You're doing all these other things. Yeah, like waiting to put together a really nicely packaged application in round 2 could definitely make the whole year better for you. I think once it gets to round 3, especially at a school like Wharton, it's that it gets tough. I've definitely seen some miracles getting off, wait lists and also like sending in these Hail Mary round 3 applications before. But it's just not a strategy. If you're starting from, hey, like any of these are possible, that is not what I would go with. But yeah, how about you? I mean, that's kind of similar.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing is for somebody, there might be somebody in this group, and you can chime in if you're in this group, but where you're ready to go, you could hit submit, but you feel like you have a little bit, you want one more chance at you're getting, a GMAT or GRE score that you feel like is representative of what you're capable of. And this is a case where, if you feel that you haven't put it all out there yet, then you have a couple more months if you wait until round 2 to submit, and just know that you're done and you have that to relax. Like, you don't have to think about the admissions part anymore. You can just focus on the test. And I've definitely had clients who were ready to hit submit, but they just felt like the score wasn't where it was at their best, and they waited. And then they did get a better score. And then you may be in a better situation, especially at a super competitive school like Wharton, where, again, everybody is, really, there's some really strong people who are applying to Wharton. Lots of, the Wharton no pile is, filled with incredibly impressive people who go on to do amazing things. So, if you think you can take a little bit longer and do that, then maybe that is worth your time. One thing that I learned in talking to the admissions team at Wharton this summer was just how valuable the team-based discussion is for them. And I don't know in all the ways that they find it useful, but they find it super predictive. And I think in some ways that the fact that they shortened the essays and, are keeping this full-on team-based discussion is indicative of the fact that team-based discussion is important. And the good news for people out there is I think they're trying to get as many people, to participate in this as possible. Obviously, still, it's very competitive to be invited. And if you get that, congratulations. And what we're going to talk about next could be very valuable to you. So, this is something that is unique to Wharton. You're essentially having this sort of watched group project. And if you've never experienced it before, it can be maybe a little daunting. And one of the things that we do at Stratus, I think, is super helpful to our clients, is that we take our clients who have been, who are going to do the TBD, and we run them through kind of a mock TBD. And actually, Sophie does a lot in moderating that for our clients. So you have to get comfortable with it. Sophie, what are some of the things that you like about the TBD, and what are some of the things you see that people who do well in the TBD do?
Yeah, I think people get really nervous about the TBD because it's the only interview of its kind. If you don't already know, it's the team-based discussion. And like Donna said, you're doing this like kind of fake group project where they're just observing how you act in a team full of strangers and getting something across the finish line in a very short period of time. What I like about it is that, honestly, I think it's like the easiest interview that you're going to do for any business school. The least amount of airtime that you will have on any interview. Like every other one, it like feels like an FBI interrogation. It's just you and the interviewer. Every single word matters. You're like really thinking about your body language, everything during the whole thing. But this is like you're with a whole bunch of people. You're going to pipe up a few times. Just make sure that you're adding value. And it really seems like the TBD, because it's so kind of like this artificial environment, and like the product that you come up with at the end, no one is going to be proud of. It is like the most rough draft thing. I feel like it's like pretty, low expectations for the product, but it's really like just about be a nice person, be collaborative. That's what Wharton is really excited to see. I think there's so many roles that you can play in a TBD. And I think what a lot of people stress out about the most that I hear is they're like, I need to be the leader. I need to show that I'm the leader so that I can win the TBD. Like this is some kind of a game show. It's not how it works. like I did my TBD in Korea. I was stationed there at the time, and I was the only native English speaker, and it was, Americans who had flown over to do the TBD in person. It was at the time. And one of the things that I noticed immediately during my TBD was there were some folks who were really quiet, and it was probably because they didn't feel very confident about their English speaking abilities, even if they like crushed the essays and everything. And being a good, just teammate in that context would mean pulling them into the discussion, not in like a, I'm going to put you on the spot with a question kind of way so that you can have some airtime, but more in like a, hey, well, we've kind of come up with these two things so far. Like, which way are you leaning, like A or B? Kind of give them like a layup in that sense, and let them share their insights. And yes, and I think for a consultant, which I wasn't a consultant at the time that I did my TBD, but as a consultant for many years after Wharton and observing consultants in these TBDs, because there's a lot of us, that's kind of, they naturally usually fall into this role of synthesizing what has happened so far and helping to move the discussion forward in a very short period of time. That's a great skill. You don't have to be a consultant to have that skill, but that's noticed and appreciated. Also someone who, just comes in with a really great idea. I mean, I think people over-index on thinking that's, again, like how you win the TBD. Like every single person in your group could get an offer to Wharton, and no one could, and maybe 3 people will. It's has nothing to do with, like it's all or nothing. Each individual really can show off how great they are in a group. There was one more, kind of like an easy one, if you are a shy person, would be timekeeper. If you struggle to just kind of like butt in, especially, man, I even feel like it's so awkward on these like video calls. Like there's like a tiny little lag, and then it's just all these strangers, and everyone's trying to be polite and not step on each other's toes. Immediately you could help keep some structure to the thing by saying you'll be timekeeper. And of course you will do more than that, but that's something that is also noticed of, okay, this thing is not going to go off the rails just because everyone's talking and there's really no structure to it. So, yeah.
And I think that sometimes we talk about at Stratus, like when people are thinking about, what kind of leader are you? How do you, they're different. There are people, let's say we're going on a hike or something. There's somebody who's going to say, like, we hope if it's a good hike, they have a map, they have a compass, they kind of want to know the structure. So there's maybe going to be somebody who's want to think about, okay, we have 35 minutes to do this. How might we use our time? Does everybody agree with that? Then there's going to be maybe somebody else who's going to lead with empathy, who's going to be noticing who's struggling. And like you said, bringing that person in, doing that. Somebody who's going to be just kind of, again, useful, taking, time, noticing if there's something that needs to be said, or noticing who hasn't spoken enough. So just, I think in terms of preparing, it might be good for people to think about, well, what is my natural strength? Like where is my go-to, where I shine? And then think about, for what that is, how can I do that in the context of this TBD? So I think the nightmare scenario that people are afraid of, and you might have some tips for this, is what do you do when you have someone that won't be quiet? And you are thinking to yourself, oh no, we're all on this sinking ship because we've got this person that talks too much. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely happens. And I think it's pretty simple depending on how they react. But I think just trying to, acknowledge what they're sharing and pivot the conversation onto other folks. Even if this person is really digging their heels in, at the end of the day, the moderators are going to notice. It's not like, everyone is going down on this sinking ship, like Donna said, just because this one person has like 0 EQ. Like that'll be noticed. I would say try to the best of your abilities to get to the final presentation at the end. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and that's also not necessarily a nail in the coffin if one person was extremely distracting and just really overtaking the conversation. So yeah, that is a way to show leadership, though, is you got this difficult person on your team. That happens in life. How are you going to handle that in a tactful way that, doesn't demean them, but doesn't make the whole group suffer?
Yeah. And then you have the opportunity sometimes in the TBD to do the kind of a reflection. And it's sometimes the reflection isn't, how did you think this go? But let's say you had, how would you handle this? Let's say you had this situation where you had this person who was really kind of the elephant in the room and was just talking too much. You don't want to, and someone asks you from the, well, how did you think your TBD went? How would you answer something like that? Because you want to be tactful, and yet aware.
Yeah, I think that question is almost always going to come up at the end of the TBD. The moderator will do a one-on-one with you for a very brief period of time and say like, well, how did it go? Or what would you have changed? Things like that. And I think it's good, the whole sandwich thing where you say something nice about the group, you acknowledge what did not go well, but then, the takeaway is like what you would change for next time to make that better.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to like not be able to pull off the most perfect TBD during the thing, but they love to see that you've reflected, that you have the awareness that this was not ideal, and have done a little bit of thinking about what would you do differently next time. So,
and this is the thing, not with anger either, because I could see how someone might be just really annoyed at someone if they feel like they're taking the TBD down, right? And they're thinking and I don't think it's ever going to be that way. You're always, because still you're being evaluated also on your essays, on your quality of work, your test scores, your, academic and professional profile. So don't make anything bigger than it needs to be. And also, just as with anything, we can't control what other people do, but we can control how we react. And I would imagine that if someone reacted with anger or annoyance or whatever, that would also then be a red flag for them. So you have to kind of balance it with tact, just like, you could get into a situation where you're at a, I don't know, a ball game, and, you don't like what the person's saying in front of you. And, next thing you know, you're in some kind of like escalation with that. That's not really what you wanted to be doing. So, so that's lots of landmines to sort of navigate. And I think that one of the reasons maybe Wharton likes this is because it creates this observational place where they can start to see, like a little bit of what is the person really like, which of course is hard to do. And, it's granted a scenario, it's a situation and not really real life, but it gives them a window to observe some situations. So I think if you keep that in mind and think, I want to make sure that I come through this as, at the end of the day, that someone says is helpful, encouraging, tactful, intelligent, collaborative, all of these things, that's helpful. Let's jump to some things about the curriculum. Because so you mentioned, that you were, you did do consulting. I know you did not necessarily come in or necessarily live in the finance realm, of which Wharton is very strong, but Wharton is very strong in many areas. So talk to us about how would someone experience Wharton, when they weren't necessarily taking every finance class that they could.
Yeah. I definitely took the bare minimum finance classes. And that's possible. Obviously, Wharton is one of the top finance schools. And if that's what you're interested in, you will get access to the best professors, the best recruiting opportunities. Like, you won't have to do any work. They will come to you. That intimidated me about Wharton when I was applying, because I thought, to be honest, I'm coming from the Army. I don't even really know what a P&L is. And I don't plan on really sharpening any, I want to be well versed in it to be, considered a halfway decent Wharton graduate, but I wasn't trying to go into finance post MBA. And I didn't know if there would be a place for me at Wharton, even though a lot of people told me there definitely would be. But absolutely, I can say without a doubt, of course there is. I feel like every year Wharton is expanding more of its other areas beyond finance and really raising those to new heights. And for me personally, I went to Wharton with a real interest in social entrepreneurship and social impact. And they had a little budding center at the time. I mean, it wasn't that small, but it compared to a Yale or something like that. It was not the focus of the school, not necessarily what they were known for. It has definitely grown since then. But at the time that I was at Wharton, what was really nice was kind of like being a big fish in a smaller pond, where there was certain fellowships I was interested in. There, I got them. There were opportunities I wanted to do, classes I wanted to take. Like, it wasn't that hard to be able to do that, because I wasn't competing with every single other Wharton student to do these kinds of things. There's also, more and more people are going to Wharton for entrepreneurship too. Which I will say has definitely grown. When I was applying, like Warby Parker was the big startup that came out of Wharton that people were really excited about.
I get my glasses from them.
Oh, yeah. And there's also like Code Epoxy. A lot of people don't know that outdoor brand from Wharton. And even while I was there were different startup founders in my class, Harper Wilde and other companies. So that's another part of the school that has really expanded. There's so much money going into that I actually think if I could do business school all over again, I would have loved to do that. You could show up at business school day one, just meet people and see who you might want to start a company with. You could just apply for all the grants, do the competitions, test out this idea with all, in your classes and with your classmates. And then by the time you graduate, like, see if you want to take it full time. It's really just like a place where you can test things and potentially fail, learn a ton. Anyway, I don't mean to go too far down this.
No. And actually, is there any particular Wharton entrepreneurial resources? And I know they're expanded since you've been there, but anything that comes to mind? Obviously, Tangent Hall, in terms of just a place for entrepreneurship at Penn in general, I think is a great resource for people to look into.
Yeah, absolutely. And the venture lab and everything. The thing that's nice about being there is that there's a lot of cross-pollination, even with undergrads, even with other grad schools, when you're like trying to come up with these ideas. Obviously, healthcare management, I didn't even say that yet, but that's another huge one at Wharton. And a lot of folks that I've even worked with who are really excited about going to a place that's super focused on that, like a little class within the class of people who are really excited about going into that field. So, yeah, there's truly a place for anyone at Wharton, and there's advantages to anything that you want to go into. So I would say, yeah, if you're kind of feeling like, oh, I don't know if Wharton might be the place for me. With almost 1,000 students in the class, like, you will find your people. You probably won't even have enough time to meet all the amazing people and resources and take advantage of everything of what you're excited about doing.
And actually, let me ask you one more thing about curriculum, and then we'll talk about the class size and ways to navigate it. But we were talking earlier, and you were saying how you didn't necessarily set out to even major in operations, but there's so many things you can get majors in and different things. But tell us a little bit about how you landed in some of the with some of your majors that you did.
Yeah, so something that's neat about Wharton's curriculum is they have so many different majors, and you can even make up a major as long as you can find a professor to sign off on being an advisor. So it's very flexible. And what a lot of people do, because there's grade non-disclosure, like as there is at many top schools, is people just take the classes that they're interested in. And it's not like undergrad where, oh man, if I don't get a 4.0, I'll never get into business school. This is like the place where, like, okay, like, just take what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what you want to learn more about, what you want to explore. And at the end of the day, it will probably shake out to some major. That's exactly what I did. I don't necessarily think I would have picked operations off of a list. I guess it makes sense given that I came from an Army background, just that would feel pretty natural. But yeah, it just ended up being that. And if you're not on track to have a major, what might end up happening is, by the time your last semester rolls around, you'll start looking at it a little closer and being like, okay, well, which major am I close to being able to finalize? And let me just make sure that I take some classes within that so that this will become that. Or turn it into some made up major based on what you're interested in. I almost made up a major. I was going to do like a social impact focused one. But at the end of the day, the operations one just made more sense. So I think Donna, may have dropped off for a moment, but I actually have the list of questions here. So I will go on to the next one. Oh yeah, we were going to talk about campus life and class size. So at Wharton, there's like this whole big class, almost 1,000 folks, and you're separating these clusters and then further separated into these cohorts, and then you're in your learning team. And with such a big class compared to some of the other business schools, I think some people think this is like going to a huge state school for undergrad or something. Like you're just going to totally get lost and it's not going to feel like a family or like a really strong network by the time you graduate. But I feel like that couldn't be further from the truth. Donna just sent a message. She's trying to get back in, but we can keep rolling. The thing is, like, I remember at graduation, and here's something people always ask me. It's like, what was your biggest regret about business school? And I think this is pretty much everyone's biggest regret, is that you didn't meet more people or have more like deep touch points with your classmates. Because even though 2 years sounds like a long time, it's like over just like that. And you're so excited going to business school because you know that all these people have been vetted for like being some of the most exceptional people, just to have this moment with you for 2 years. And there's only so much you can do, beyond recruiting and classes, like that's your social time. And at the end of the day, you're going to probably gravitate towards some folks, go on a lot of vacations with them and have a lot of fun memories. So at graduation, I sat there and you're there for hours. So I looked through the pamphlet that had everyone's name in it. And I was collecting some data like a good Wharton grad. And I was like kind of checking off if I knew them really well, if I could at least put a face to the name, or like if I didn't know them at all. And what I found was I think I only even knew in some capacity like 25% of my class. And that's about the size of a cluster. And I didn't know everyone in my cluster, but it just goes to show, I do feel like I made so many amazing friendships. The thing is, like, the way that Wharton is set up, you will have kind of like all these little classes and families within the broader Wharton community. And those people will know people, and you can really design this however you want. But I feel like the class size is really nice because that way you have this almost, it feels like infinite of people who you can meet, and you certainly won't meet them all. But you also have all these little classes or clubs or different opportunities, or whoever lives nearby you, ways to find like more like your really close friends by graduation, like all those weddings that you're going to go to right after graduation. There's a lot of that. So let's see. And then, this next question is about some of my favorite Wharton experiences, like favorite places to study, coffee, relaxation, or dinner. I think I would separate my Wharton experiences into two buckets. Like, one is kind of the stuff around campus and in Philly, which is so fun because it's so walkable. But on the outside would be all the international trips or the long trips that you take. Hi, Donna. Welcome back.
I don't know what happened, but I'm back.
That's fine. I've just been going through the questions. I'm talking.
Yeah. No, I've been able to hear it all the whole time, so that's good.
Cool. But yeah, I think, as you know, with any business school experience, you're going to have a lot of vacations that you're going on. And sometimes it's a little puzzling how we're all paying for all of this, but we all just kind of seem to make it work because we realize we're not going to have these 2 years off to just kind of hang out with friends and go have all these fun experiences, potentially once we're back in the working world. But yeah, around campus, what's so unique about Wharton is that almost no one is from Philly. You will have a handful of people in your class who are from the area, lived there already, and what have you. But most people are not from this city. And so it's not like you're going to Stern and everyone already has this whole network in New York City and they live all over the place. Like, people live pretty much in this 3x3 block radius around Rittenhouse Square. And you walk to everything. I had a bicycle, but that was kind of unusual. Like, even that, like, no one is going to have a car. And there's, some public transportation, but for the most part, you walk and you can get anywhere. So a lot of the hanging out is like at people's brownstones or houses. I lived in an apartment and there was like a communal area where we did a lot of studying and like little clubs. Like, I was co-president of the Scotch and Whiskey Club, and my friend and I, we had just gotten back from a trip to North Korea, and we brought back a bottle of whiskey, and we hosted like a North Korean whiskey tasting night in my apartment, communal area. So those are kind of some of the memories that I definitely remember the most. The food in Philly is also amazing. I think, I always say I think it's better than the food in New York by far. And I lived in New York after business school for years, because it's way easier to get a reservation. You can wear whatever you want, a lot less pretentious. And the food quality is actually, I just think, better. I think, honestly, my favorite dinner spots don't exist anymore. But there is a really good one that popped up after called Huda. That's a really good sandwich place. So yeah, there's a lot of that. And then outside of there's going to be annual trips like the Columbia trip, Columbia, like the country, and other things. There's like, a trip to Antarctica that I took through Wharton. There's a trip to Cuba that someone's mom, had a connection at the embassy. So she was able to get us on like an educational visa to all go over there. That was amazing. And I mean, you've got amazing classmates who love to plan trips and stuff. So it is really like you can there's like endless opportunities to connect with your friends, and not to mention like the sports teams and stuff that also travel through Wharton if you're doing hockey or rugby or things like that. So yeah, there's things that the school puts on officially, different events. I mean, I already mentioned follies and things like that, but there's a lot of creativity that comes from your classmates too. And that's what really creates, I think, some of the strongest memories.
Yeah, we were there, I guess, a little bit over a year ago, and it's nice when you're in a place where, yeah, you feel like it's walkable, and you're actually, after class, you're going to run into your classmates, as opposed to, everyone's scattering to the far corners of a city and are not going to come back. So that is something that, sometimes I think people think of maybe Philadelphia as not as like just sort of spread. It was very centered around, right around where all the academic buildings are for Wharton. So let's see if there's any other questions. There's one that I see that do you have to explain an academic gap and a low GPA and an optional essay? And those would be, I think, classic things to mention. So things in an optional essay, again, we sort of touched on that earlier, but if there's something that really is good in the background that would help explain your story, then you can spend maybe a little bit of time on that. But the bread and butter of an optional essay, and you do not need to make the optional essay maxed out to the word limit. If you can explain in one sentence, I broke my leg one semester of college, and it made it difficult academically to get around, and my GPA suffered that semester, period. That's like, you don't have to, and you're not making excuses. So maybe you're just like, that was the semester that I got a 2.8 was the semester that I broke my leg, and I was having a lot of appointments and medical stuff. That's it. So you're not making excuses. You're just giving context. Or, I had a work gap from this date to this date because, I don't know, my company had a massive layoff, and it took me that long to get my next job, or whatever. Or I decided I wanted to travel, and I had this trip planned, whatever. So you just want to give, so that when you're an admissions person, you don't want to spend your time, you don't want to make the admissions people spend their time wondering what happened in that 6 months, or what was going on with this, or just give some background, and then they can kind of move on. And someone actually asked, in a nutshell, the total cost of the MBA. Well, that is that's a complicated question, in that also there's, opportunity costs, and there's, so you're leaving your job for 2 years. I would say, though, if you ask people who have MBAs, most of them, if they regret getting an MBA, and maybe I don't see the full scope of everybody, and maybe I'm skewed to see people who are happy with their MBAs, but I think a lot of people find that it is a degree that broadens the opportunities. And to Sophie, what she was saying about, you just have this now greatly expanded global network that can be very helpful, not just, the first couple of years after you graduate, but like, Sophie was talking about entrepreneurship. She might be going to her next reunion and finding out somebody who's doing some really interesting things in, some space, and collaborate. And all of a sudden now she's got, someone she's collaborating with as a business partner that wasn't even at Wharton at the time she was at Wharton. So I think that, you can't, there's a lot of opportunities like that. Obviously, I would say the people who are on this GMAT club video thing are people who are probably in general very interested in the MBA. Are you seeing anything? Oh, are those trips organized by Wharton? I'm guessing they're paid for by students. So what would you say? Well, so people spend a lot of money, and actually it's funny, you can usually get some kind of like financial aid or, just add on to the overall cost of your education. And so it makes these trips accessible. I don't know how everybody in MBA programs can travel so much, but it does seem to be a time when people do travel a lot. I know when I did my MBA, we took a trip to Mexico and we were doing some like research on in the textile industry, and also had some, visits. We went to go visit a glass blowing factory in Monterey. And, so, and when you go on these trips, to Sophie's point, what's neat is if you were just doing this on your own, you wouldn't have the connections and the access. Like we had special meetings at the embassy in Mexico City because somebody in my class had a connection to get our group in and have these conversations. So that's what's really special about these trips, is that it's the collective power of the school and the organization and the classmates who have connections around the world that can really get you not in a tourist way to see these places, but actually into the business of seeing the life and the business of a country. That's what I remember the most that was really special at those trips. Right.
Mm-hmm. I would say for those trips, some of them, especially if you're going international, you can probably assume you're going to be spending at least couple thousand, few $1,000s. But no one's making you go. Like everyone,
you don't have to go,
right? Time turn them down and say, okay, I'm already going on 2 vacations this month. I don't have time to make it 3 or something like that. So you can pick and choose what's important to you. I mean, the Antarctica one, it's kind of like what Donna was saying. Some of these are going to be like more money than you would have spent on your own, but some of them are actually like a once in a lifetime deal you're never going to get again. Like I probably would have had no way to go to Cuba. And I also would have had no other way to go to North Korea at the time. You can't go now, but that was kind of a narrow window at the time. And you can't, I couldn't go on a flight to Antarctica for $6,000, I think it was. I mean, a lot of money, but the alternative is spending a lot more money to sit on a boat for 3 weeks and, not be camping on the island and instead be on, a boat or something. So a lot of things to consider, but it's not like, yes, there are some trustafarians at school who are going to seemingly never stress about this. But there's normal people like me who just saved money, took out loans, and prioritized what I wanted to prioritize. And I tell you what, in the rearview mirror, I don't miss any of the money. I'm happy to have experiences.
So, same. All right. So I think we've scanned a lot. I hope this has been helpful for people that are, again, in the midst of Wharton applications. Obviously, if you are applying round 1, you want to make sure that you get off this webinar and finish strong in the last mile and get your application submitted. For those of you who are looking at round 2, you have lots of time to think about, and maybe, this is inspiring you to go and reach out to people in clubs and talk and learn more, or go on a campus visit. And for those of you, hopefully many of you here who will be lucky enough to get those TBD interviews, I think Sophie gave us some really good insights and things to think about. The one thing I kind of like about the TBD is that you can't start preparing for it now, actually, because you don't really know what the question every year they give you a slightly different twist. So it's not something that you have to burden yourself with, and that really whatever you can do in the week or 2 that you have, once you find out you have an interview to prepare, is plenty sufficient. So you don't have to go knocking yourself out. And the only thing, I guess, if you wanted to low key prepare, you could just kind of, again, think about where your strengths are as a leader, and think about, okay, how can I kind of be conscious about how can I do that? And I'm sure there must be all kinds of content that you can look on YouTube's GMAT Club channel in the past about, Wharton TBD. So you could maybe do a little bit of that, but you really, maybe you could just rest and be glad you submitted and go for a walk and enjoy yourself for a couple of weeks before you have to worry about the next. I feel like the whole MBA admissions process is almost like some kind of ninja games where it's like in the beginning, we have the, okay, now you have to express yourself in this, well, first, even before that, it's like, who am I? And you have to spend some time doing who am I? And then you have to spend some time, how do I convey, my goals, and how do I convey it in a compelling way? And then once you get all that done, then you must move to the interpersonal, exercises where now you've got to practice your video essays and your TBD or your recorded videos or whatever it is. So it's just kind of, you have to take it all with kind of a grain of salt and kind of just do the next thing next. That's not, so anything else? Otherwise, I think we can just wish everyone well and thank you for being attentive. And we hope everyone is successful. And also we should say that if anybody wants to reach out to us at Stratus, we are here to help. You can do a free consultation. It's right from our website. It's Stratus Admissions. We have a really active blog that you could find on our website that has, Sophie's tips for how to get into Wharton in terms of essays and essay tips for all the schools, just anything. We live in the MBA admission cycle. So whatever is the next thing you need to be thinking about, we've got an article on it on our blog. So feel free to check that out. Got dates for all the schools on there, just lots of helpful information. And we would be happy to talk to you in a consultation or chat, and wish you the best. Okay, bye.
Good luck, everyone. Bye.